Well, we were brought up very much as a family where everyone got to speak very freely, and we were encouraged very much by my mum and my dad to be quite, individual and unique in our views, and to air them quite freely. So once I turned up at public school, which back in those days, which was the year before the Child Act came in, was quite a different animal to what it is now. It came as quite a shock that these sort of free-thinking boxers turned up who were not particularly conformist. So I suppose I wouldn't describe myself as a rebel. I just describe myself probably as a non-conformist in that sort of establishment public school. But having said that, the longer I spend away from it, the more grateful I am for some of the things I learned there.
Did you get expelled for non-conformity? What was your sin?
I wasn't expelled in the end. I think I'm still allowed to call myself an OH, as they say in Old Rogan. And I had sort of an indiscretion with a girl at the school ball towards the end, and terrifying to let an entire boys' school meet girls once a year, and the inevitable happened, and I was asked to not come back unless I was going to sit my A-levels and then leave.
Okay, so more free behaviour than free thinking perhaps was your crime. You've been an actor, well-known actor for, almost 20 years now, but you became a political household name really only in January, obviously after appearing on Question Time when you had a fairly decent dust-up with an audience member over racism. This audience member accused you of being a white privileged male, and you accused them of being racist, and obviously that caught all the headlines. Would it be fair to say that Question Time appearance changed your life?
Yeah, I think so. It's certainly, well, I think of life as a journey. So it showed me the next part of my journey, but it certainly had an effect that I didn't anticipate at all having, because I felt I was voicing, in fact, I know I was voicing a very mainstream view, and I didn't realise what effect that was going to have on me at the time.
Can you sum up your views? Because they've obviously caused a lot of attention, they've caused you a lot of controversy, they've also got you quite a lot of followers. What is the basis of your philosophy and why you speak out these days?
Well, I think the basis of my philosophy is always the right and the freedom to speak and to have an opinion, and to have that opinion disagreed with, either not robustly or robustly, and the ability to not lose relationships over differing opinions. But mainly it's a freedom of speech issue for me, which seems to be being curtailed quite substantially in society.
Did you become a freedom of speech campaigner, as you might put it, purposely, or did this all sort of happen by accident as a result of events leading on from Question Time?
No, I mean, I've always been a freedom of speech campaigner since the day my mum and dad taught me that my brain was something that was worthwhile using, and the only way you were going to work out what you truly thought was by talking. So yes, I was very. It began in early days, and is now entrenched.
Do you enjoy being controversial? Your views have got you a lot of attention, some of it not altogether very praiseworthy. Do you enjoy all that? Do you enjoy the cut and thrust? Do you like being in the middle of things?
No, and also I don't think my views are controversial at all. I think they're extremely, they're probably, as far as I can gather, judging by walking down the street, they seem to be what the majority think rather than the minority.
What happens when you walk down the street?
People stop me and say, thank God for you. Someone has to do it. Someone's got to speak up. Thank you for doing it. And that comes from everybody, from different classes, ages, ethnicities, everything. So that's come as a shock and a surprise.
You've talked about not getting work as an actor anymore because of your views and the stand you take on things. Is that a joke, or do you generally fear that you're going to struggle for work these days because of the stands you take?
Well, I suppose it's twofold, isn't it? I've decided consciously that I don't want to act at the moment, but I think at the same time, because I'm working 18-hour days on Reclaim, but yes, no, it's been made very clear to me that my acting career is not going to prosper as a result of this.
Do you regret that?
I regret the state of society we're in, where moderate views involve your career being ended. Yes, I do. I think it's very sad.
But you don't regret any actions you took?
No, I don't. No. I mean, if I do regret any actions I took, I tend to apologise for them, which is also one of the things that we can reclaim. You know, the ability to make mistakes without fear and move on.
What do you think is the basis of your campaigning, your activity for freedom of speech? Is it something you've always felt, or was there a particular trigger for it in life?
I think it probably got sharpened up during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, actually. And I was sat on set during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. And
remind us who Brett Kavanaugh is again for the listeners.
He is a Supreme Court judge in America. And his nomination hearing was horrific, what they put him through. And he was accused by Christine Blasey Ford of a sexual indiscretion many years ago, which she couldn't remember where, when, how, or she can remember it was definitely him. And she was very convincing, but the argument which came from it, which I found very difficult, was one had to believe the victim. And I thought that really struck very hard at the cornerstones of what Western democracy is and what the proper legal system is, which is one is presumed innocent until proven guilty. So I started to think, we're beginning to make narrative more important than fact, and I think those are scary times when you enter into that. So I think I was pricked very much by that. Yes.
So let's talk about the Reclaim Party. So that's the political party you set up in the last month or so. Mm. Why have you gone so far as setting up an actual political party, and what is your ambitions for it? Where do you want all this to go?
So I think the reason to set up a political party is in order to get votes and stand for Parliament. The reason the party has been set up is because I think that the majority views that people hold, like freedom of speech and that England isn't a racist country and you should be able to say things without worry of having your job removed from you, have become so sort of normalised that I felt that it was time that someone actually started trying to reclaim a reasonable discussion and a rational debate in a world of very, very polarised extremes. And, you know, I thought, certainly for myself and with my platform, that people downstream from me who are losing their jobs and have lost their jobs as a result of voicing perfectly rational opinions, needed someone to stand up for them. And also these are majority views. They're very moderate views that I have. And I mean, media are very clever at painting them as to be extremist views, but they're just what most people think, you know.
So this is not just a pressure group or a campaign group. This is a political party that wants to obtain office. Will you stand for Parliament yourself?
Absolutely, yeah, I will. When the right opportunity comes along, yeah.
So the next general election, or would you stand in by-elections? What's your thinking?
We weren't planning on announcing until for a couple of months, actually, saying that the Times were going to run a story. What was it, the Times? I think it was the Times. We're going to run a story saying I was starting a party with Nigel Farage. And I thought, well, we need to get ahead of that because that's not true. So we had a sort of very soft announcement. So we haven't actually officially launched yet. So once we've launched, I'll let you know about all of that stuff.
Is there an MP you'd like to run against in particular? Is there someone that you want to challenge?
Oh, that's a good question. Who would I like to challenge?
Let me bring Gloria in. She's got a few questions for you as well, Laurence.
Really interested in listening to what you've said so far. Many things struck me, but let me start with this one. So you said that you voted for all the main parties in the past, because I think most people would assume that you are firmly on the right, but you have obviously voted for the Labour Party at some point. And I'd like to explore how recently that was and why you did so when you did.
I voted for Corbyn in the first time he stood. When was that? I'm useless with you.
2017 general election.
I just read through the manifesto and I thought, that's a good manifesto. And I can't, you're going to ask me exactly what struck me about it, and I'm not going to be able to remember. But I remember just thinking, yep, he's the one. But this was before, before people were more familiar with what Corbyn was all about. So, that's when I voted for him. And then I voted Lib Dems and Conservative before.
Is that the only Labour leader that you have voted for?
Well, I was vaguely hoping that Keir Starmer I could vote for at some point. But no, I couldn't vote for Tony Blair because I just didn't, there was just something about him as a person that made me go, You
were voting Tory or Lib Dem during Gordon Brown, Tony Blair and the Ed Miliband years. And then you voted for Jeremy Corbyn in 2017, and you might consider voting for Keir Starmer.
I wanted to.
You thought about it. Tell me why you even thought about voting for, again, a left-wing party, a left-wing leader.
Because like most people in this country, I have little bits of me that are on the left. I have a lot of bits of me that are in the middle, and I have some bits of me that are a bit on the right. So I thought that Keir would be, he seemed like an impressive man and someone that had the personality to take on Boris. And but then he started with the taking the knee and all of this stuff. But and then I thought, oh dear, you've bought into the whole unconscious bias thing. So there you go. That sort of removes you as an option. I think, as I've said frequently, I think the whole critical race theory thing is so unpleasant and so divisive that I want to vote for a unifying.
Do you bring up unconscious bias? I mean, there is quite a lot of evidence out there, when people submit job applications, if their name is not white British, then they are less likely to be invited to interview. A lot of companies now doing blind CVs, to eliminate that unconscious bias, by which I mean, don't put you don't put your name, your age, and that's sort of regarded as a good thing to do to stop employers thinking, oh, that person went to X school, so I know something about them, and hiring in their own image, really. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, is there?
Well, I mean, a few things. One is that there is no ethnic pay gap between 16 and 30-year-old black and white people. And actually, weirdly, I think the Telegraph reported yesterday that the ethnic pay gap has shifted towards the people with black skin. And in terms of unconscious bias, the people that came up with it have distanced themselves from it, because you can never get the same result twice. It would never be, it doesn't hold enough evidentiary value to be used in court, for example. And I just think it's an extremely divisive thing to put in the back of their heads to remind people after a hard day that somewhere in the back of their brain, they're also a racist. I think it's just, if I could see anything that, any benefit whatsoever, I'd agree. So of course one is never denying that there isn't racism within the society. Of course there is. But to say that we have this critical race theory asserts that everybody is a racist, and white people, it's impossible for white people not to be racist, which I find, if it wasn't so unbelievably racist itself, I would laugh.
Well, let me try this a different way. When we look at all the great jobs in this country, the top professions, I mean, it can't be a coincidence that most of those jobs, the overwhelming percentage of those great jobs in those professions, are held by posh white blokes. I mean, something's going on, isn't it?
Is it? I don't know. I don't know what the...
because if something's not going on, then we are assuming that the most talented people in this country are posh white blokes, because there's either something going on or they genuinely represent the most talented people in our country.
Is Sajid Javid a posh white bloke? Is Priti Patel a posh white bloke?
Not exclusive at all, just overwhelming.
I don't know the stats. I wouldn't argue with you on that. But I would say that there is certainly, we're an extremely diverse country, and there is nothing blocking people getting to the top should they wish to. And I think skin colour should be irrelevant to that.
Do you admire any politicians? UK based or otherwise. Is there anyone that you look up to?
I really did look up to Ronald Reagan. Yeah, I do. But politics wasn't my deep fascination. I'm much more interested in academics than I am in politicians, and I quite like a good news anchor and stuff like that. But I did look up to Reagan, and I obviously we were taught at school about the Battle of Britain before. We didn't get the modern version where you're also taught about the Bengal famine. So I've got a very deep feeling of gratitude. And both my grandfathers fought and were injured in the Second World War. So I have a very deep gratitude and love of Winston Churchill.
And are there any politicians who really get you goat, or is the list too long to go through?
I think it's a tough job being a politician. So I'm forgiving of them. They get interviewed all the time. It's really hard. People are constantly trying to catch them out. I suppose I wasn't a huge fan of, who was the one who was going on about being pansexual?
Was that Layla Moran, the Lib Dem MP and candidate for the leadership?
When people start talking about what their sex lives are, I'm a bit like, okay, come on, please. I don't care. I really couldn't be bothered. So, who do I loathe? I don't loathe anybody. I'm not that sort of person. I'm not a loather of people.
I listened again to what you said to Tom about the Brett Kavanaugh case, and I wrote down the quote that you said. There was this narrative during that case that one had to believe the victim. Now, survivors of sexual violence and sexual assault say the one thing that they want more than anything is to be believed, and they feel that the system is stacked against them being believed. And you actually don't need to look at rape convictions to suggest they may, may be onto something here. And so I just wanted to just challenge you on when you said that you were upset about the narrative that one had to believe the victim, because the alternative feels worse to me.
The alternative to not believe. So you think you would rather believe the victim and a man be jailed falsely for rape than you would the case be examined in court and seen, because obviously there's been quite a lot of cases as well of men being accused of rape and then their phone records and various things being used in the court process to totally and utterly exonerate them. So I think that in this system that we live in, we have a legal system. And the great thing about the legal system is that it's very good and careful and slow about finding out the facts. And I think it's very important that, for example, it's fine if we're going to believe the victim, then let's say that in a court case that the man is proven not to have been guilty of rape, then let's send the woman to jail for the same amount of time as the man would be sent to jail. So I just think all I'm interested in is fairness. I've got no particular gripe about, and I also have deep, horrible feelings about the damage that rape would do to a woman for the rest of her life. So I in no way would demean the seriousness of what it is, but also one needs to get the facts.
So I read that you won't date women under 35. Why not?
Yeah, it was a slightly tongue-in-cheek comment. I went out. I had a relationship with a girl who was very, very woke, and our world views would just seem to be rather different. We couldn't agree on a great deal. So our values, I suppose, weren't aligned, and therefore it wasn't a great relationship. It's not a blanket ban across. It was just I was being a bit tongue-in-cheek, I suppose, about that.
And this is the same girlfriend that is reported you broke up with because she liked a Gillette advert from last year, which celebrated the Me Too movement and said that everybody needs to address toxic masculinity. Was that the moment that you thought, you know what, this is done?
Yeah, I just thought toxic masculinity, honestly. Why is everyone putting two words together and telling me it means something? It doesn't mean anything. Toxic masculinity. If it meant something, I can understand what it meant.
It could mean violence against women.
Violence against women, yeah, but there's, you'll also find that the vast majority of child alienation cases in this society are undertaken by women. So, the men behave appallingly in certain situations and women behave appallingly in certain.
Child alienation. What?
Children being alienated from their parents in divorce from one parent or another. That's very strongly a female issue. And, my view on life is that men and women are different but equal in the way that they can achieve and should have all the doors open in their life. But you don't have to be particularly, there's toxic femininity as well. But I just think, men, women, let's lose the silly terminology. It doesn't mean anything.
Finally, because that girlfriend that you broke up with, there seemed a contradiction to me between listening to you talking to Tom and you saying freedom of speech is what motivates you, is what drives you. But yet that girlfriend was not, you didn't respect her freedom of speech on toxic masculinity.
I totally respected her freedom of speech on toxic masculinity, but I also...
We didn't want to go out with her anymore.
I also respected my freedom not to have to listen to it if I didn't want to.
Laurence, the Nigel Farage thing, you've been linked to Nigel Farage. Is that completely false? Have you ever spoken to him? Do you associate with his politics? I've
met him, and he's a very impressive man, and he's put up with a hell of a lot to follow his views, and that's to be, one can only respect in a way that his commitment to what he believes. But no, I don't think what I'm trying to do is particularly aligned with what Nigel has done. But he's probably I'd say probably the most influential politician of his generation. So I've got a lot of appreciation for what he has managed to achieve. I don't mean I agree with him on things, and I don't think what I'm trying to do and what I am doing really is cohabits with what he's doing.
Let's talk about the most recent bit of attention that you got over Sainsbury's. You attacked them for promoting Black History Month on Twitter.
I didn't attack them for promoting Black History Month on Twitter at all. What I did was I attacked them for saying that they were going to create safe spaces for Black colleagues in the workspace, which essentially, without much mental gymnastics at all, is a form of segregation. And seeing as we want a more equal and progressive society, I don't think introducing segregated spaces for people of different ethnicities is a very progressive policy.
Okay, some have said, a lot of criticism in the media, that what you were saying to Sainsbury's was racist. You deny that charge, but do you see why some have made that charge against you?
The problem with the left, the hard left, is that, and their cohorts in the media, is that they don't know what the word racist means. So anyone who doesn't agree with them is a racist. Whereas to me, racist means what it actually means, which is to discriminate against someone based on the colour of their skin.
What about Prince Harry's declaration a week or two back that Britain is structurally racist? What did you think when you heard that?
Read a book.
Any ones you'd like to suggest to him?
It's just absolutely not true. There's no polling that supports it. The Ipsos Mori polling on this stuff is so clear that this country is a very tolerant and ever more increasingly tolerant country. So it's very easy. It's a very easy narrative for Harry to lob in the old England is a systemically racist country, but he's just being fed it. It's a critical race theory idea. And it's worse than England is structurally racist. It says that every white person in Western democracy is structurally racist, and it's just not true. So we need to have something. I'm happy to have a balanced debate, and also say, of course, there's examples of racism in this country, as there is in every country. But to label an entire nation of people who actually really supported him as structurally racist, I don't think reflects him in the finest of light.
Now is the time where we have to put you in a box. We have to identify your politics, which I think are complex, certainly, and quite interesting. Can I have a go at summing you up as this and tell me if I've got this right? I'm going to put you down as a cross-voting campaigning libertarian pugilist. How do you plead?
What, the pugilist is a fighter, is it?
Exactly.
I wouldn't say I would want to be a pugilist. It's more, you can call me a cross-voting libertarian defender of my reputation, absolutely, because having had my good name dragged through the mud for the last 10 months by the media and our dear friends on Twitter, I think I have every right to defend myself, yes.
Okay, you'll take cross-voting campaigning Libertarian then?
Go for it.